Good morning. Thank you for inviting me. And so my name is Salam Al Kuntar. I am an archaeologist. I work at the University of, or Rutgers University, and I am the chair of the board for Syrians for Heritage. So I will be talking to you about some of the work we are doing in northwest Syria and the Idlib and Aleppo provinces. So let's start with this. So this work, some of you might be familiar with. It started when I worked at the University of Pennsylvania at the Penn Museum or the Penn Cultural Heritage Center, and together with Brian Daniels and Corey Wagner here at the Smithsonian, we established this something called the Safeguarding the Heritage of Syria and Iraq project. So this project really evolved in response to the crisis in Syria that started in 2011, 2012. And then subsequent development in Iraq with ISIS crisis and so on. So at the time, it was really kind of difficult to figure out what is the best response to this crisis. Lots of heritage sites in Syria at the time were being destroyed by bombardment, really heavy artillery, and also looting. Most organizations really try to work along the channels of UNESCO traditional connections with the Syrian government, which was the main, basically, party responsible for most of the destruction. So what we try to do is more to look for opportunities to help those who did not have any official help from the well-known organizations. So primarily in the northwest of the area, where it was out of the control of the Syrian regime, and also it lacked really any formal governing. It was largely controlled by different militias, moderate and extremist, and political control of that area kept changing over time. So I kept a lot of, so I am a Syrian archaeologist, so I had connections with colleagues who stayed in the area and were trying to do something. So the interventions we did were mostly to basically help things from further deterioration, collapse, and also to basically help these guys inside Syria still trying to do something. Most of them archaeologists with some heritage preservation experience, but not much. So we started this, and it was really difficult to navigate through that very difficult political environment. So what we started really very early on was a training that we at the time, it was still easy for these guys, easy enough to come to Turkey. So they came, and we started this with the Smithsonian. And here you can see me and Smithsonian Conservator Robert at the time, that we tried to basically learn from a lot of the experiences the Smithsonians had in other places like Haiti and first aid, also to cultural heritage, that they worked together with the ICROM. And so I'm not going to this is a recap. Many of you here might have seen this before, but I always like to remember these good days. In a way, they were good days because we were able, to do something. And it was a difficult time. You can see here, we at the workshop, we tried to discuss what is possible to do, and the proposal was for a museum that is called the Maura Museum, where it has the largest collection of Roman and Byzantine mosaics, probably in the Middle East. And that was really under like threat of being attacked by bombardment or looted. So we put like a plan during that workshop. Our colleagues said, these are the material we have, and these are material we cannot have. So, we bought stuff for them in Turkey. And this is the museum. It's also like an Ottoman caravanserai building, so the building itself is historical. You can see the guys here trying to apply the very basic method of covering the mosaics with this Tyvek and then sandbags. And it's this basic method that they used in World War II, which we talked about at the workshop, and the Smithsonian conservators showed them how to do it. And actually, the museum got bombed. So it's really, it helped preserve these mosaics. The update on the museum, it was actually bombed 2 times after that event. But recently, have been retaken by the Syrian regime forces. And it was interesting because the pro-regime, director of the museum, who fled to Damascus at the time, he came back and he actually praised the work that we did. There is a video of him saying that, which was interesting. Yeah. So another project we did, this is Ebla. This is one of the most important sites, Bronze Age sites in Syria. It has one of the largest archives in cuneiform tablets. And it was excavated by Italian missions in the 70s, was the big discovery. It has a lot of, things that we call things what we know about from biblical documents and other Mesopotamian documents. So this site has been targeted by looters really badly. As you can see, these looting pits really endangered the structure of the sites. A lot of them dug really sort of tunnels through the Acropolis area to get to the tombs where they can find cuneiform tablets. So we tried to do this. First, we documented all the looting event at the site, and then we tried to apply some more emergency interventions. So these interventions were really to help these buildings from further deteriorations. And this is Ayman Nabo, who you will see in other places, who is someone who leads something called the Idlib Antiquities Center, which I'll talk about in a second. Oh. So after that work we did for almost up to 2013, 2016, and we were many Syrians involved in this project were in different institutions, mostly in Europe and inside Syria and Turkey, and we thought we needed a more of a platform that represents Syrians in the diaspora, and to help connect them with the Syrians inside Syria still trying to do, and civil society groups as well. So this is a foundation we founded with the help, of course, of the Smithsonian. And we had our first meeting here, actually, in, I believe it was in the fall 2015. And the SIMAT emerged sort of to take over the SHOSI efforts in a more formalized way, and to actually be able to expand a lot of the work to also work with refugees in Turkey and in Europe. In particular. So these are our major principles. And SIMAT, because I have a archaeological background, lots of people were involved in the SHOSI project, were also with this kind of archaeological training. But we needed to be inclusive or also like intelligible heritage, and a lot of the heritage that mattered to the larger Syrian displaced people, and particularly intangible heritage. So we tried to be more inclusive and more thinking of the totality of heritage, both like ancient sites and more a lot of the oral traditions, intangible heritage, and the basically dealing with griefness and loss. So also the thing is about SIMAT, it's really like, everybody is involved with it, is Syrian almost. And we try to basically to tell the story about Syrian heritage from the Syrian perspective, and incorporate a lot of the research that's been done before, try to work with colleagues who worked in Syria, who do research in Syria, and try also to help with the preservation. So basically, these are our major goals, and mostly providing that platform that would help prioritize Syrian voices and perspective on what we need to do with heritage. And a lot of the talks, it's not now the venue to talk about traditional or Orientalist way of archaeological practices and heritage preservation in the Middle East, but we're trying to, in a way, have a different approach. It's working well, and we are forming good relations with international organizations and institutions. So these are some of the projects that we do and we've done, and we have others we're doing right now. We still want to do stuff inside Syria, along the sides of interventions, but we also basically try to do also more scholarly work with workshops. We have a symposium planned for the fall 2020. So SIMAT is based in Berlin. It operates as a nonprofit. It's it's registered as something called EV, which is like basically nonprofit association. We try to work within German law. It's really not easy. Lots of bureaucracy, but it has that opportunity because we can work within Europe and also inside Syria. In Turkey, we also got equivalency documentation, so we also can operate in the U.S. now, and. The idea is to basically expand, and it will be a venue for any Syrians interested in work on Syrian heritage preservation to basically work with us and exchange. And like lots of people actually were working, didn't know what the others were doing. So it's now we have more connections and building on these connections. All right, so this is one of the projects that we've completed recently that I would like to talk about. The Idlib Museum in Idlib city, you've probably heard about in the news. It is one of, it's a very nice museum. I mean, let's put it this way. It is a nice museum. Remember the site I showed you, Ebla, with all these cuneiform tablets, very valuable. They were actually hosted by this museum. So for that, particular reason, the museum is very important because of the Ebla collection. It has also lots of classical, Roman, Byzantine collections from the area called the Dead Cities, which is, a UNESCO World Heritage Site called the Northern Village of Syria, of Northern Syria, I think. The villages of Northern Syria, I could never figure out that name, but largely known as the Dead Cities among archaeologists. So this is the museum before the war, and you can see that is the archive. Well, I guess I can. How do I do this? Okay. No. Okay. So this is the archive room. It's reconstructed from the site of Ebla. The museum also had, like, you know, nice displayed artifacts from all of these sites in the area. It also had, you can see here, modern art. Like this is an area controlled by Al-Qaeda right now, like their city, basically. So it's hard to imagine that these things are happening. So these are you know, contemporary artists from the city. They were also displayed at the museum. So the museum got bombed twice, once in 2015 and once in 2016. And that created a hole in the building. And it was, after that event, it was looted. So you can see there that most of the things in showcases were looted. And you can see some of the storage. What happened is the director of the museum, before they left, they actually sealed some of the storage areas, and they kind of hid some of the important artifacts. Mostly the golden stuff, the stuff, you know, made of gold, and some of the tablets, but not a lot. You know, storage area, when the museum got bombed, the looters had, you know, there was like an opening in the wall, and they could get to the storage area with stuff where it was stored. So basically, it didn't help very much, and stuff got looted. So out of like the major 1,500 tablets that were at the museum, these are important tablets. There are also some other tablets from that site in the Aleppo National Museum, and some are in Damascus. But we discovered that there were about 1,500 cuneiform tablets looted, missing. That's when we did the whole, basically going through the inventories and looking what is there actually. So here in this picture you see the guys. This is Ammar Kinawi, who directs the preservation projects for SIMAT inside. He's a member of SIMAT. He's based in Syria, and believe it or not, he was in France for a year, but he decided to go back to Syria to do this work. These are the guys also working on the documentation. So it was everything what was left at the museum, which is like about 500 intact important tablets, and lots of fragmentary, were really documented well. And yes, this is Abdus Salam and Ibrahim Al Kuntar, a relative of mine, working also. He's our IT person on the documentation. There you see actually very important Christian icons that also, Orthodox Christian icons were still left at the museum. And these are in a really terrible condition with all the humidities and the conditions. So you can see here, a lot of things were put in order. The Idlib Antiquities Center that partners with SIMAT and work really hand in hand with SIMAT, try to basically bring it a little bit in order and life, in a way. So just also there was a little bit of a pressure from the local, like, militia that controls the city, and to basically, open the museum to the public, which we were not supportive of, but we kind of had to do it. So they put it back together in a way, trying to some of these. So a lot of these things, and by the way, also the guys were also good about protecting the modern art stuff, which is still at the museum. So you can see them doing that here. This is Ayman Nabo. He's so good about cleaning. He's cleaning himself there. And they also planted trees and put a lot of posters and stuff around the museum to help bring back a little bit to life. And it has visitation from school kids and people in general. So now, some other preservation projects that are similar to the one I showed you at Abla, we do. This is St. Simeon Monastery. This is part of the Dead Cities, the World Heritage Site. And it got really bombed and damaged. So you see the collapse in the wall. What we tried to do, and this is really work we've done, we documented the site extensively. We were about to intervene, but this area got like severely, there's not possible to work there anymore. The guys were there last thing in early January. They haven't been able to go back. But we did like this extensive documentation or where the damage is, where we need to intervene, and the best way we could do it. Another site we're working right now. So this is the site of Ain Dara. That is in the more North Kurdish area, which is now under Turkish control, so to speak. Could you believe this got looted? And guess where it is? It's in Lebanon. It got to Lebanon from Idlib. We're trying to, we haven't put out a statement yet because they were promising us that they will get it back. The Syrian, forces that work with the Turkish army, and we're still waiting for this investigation to end. But anyway, the site, there you see, this is a major bombing, and, it was at the time when the Kurdish, PKK, whatever they call them, forces were in control, the Turkish army bombed the site. And, but it's not all kind of destroyed, but you could see its significant destruction. So at this stage, we are documenting, we're trying to document these sculptures. They're very important. There's no time to give you historic information, but this is an Iron Age, so-called Aramean Luvian site art. It's a very particular art to, southern Turkey and northern Syria. So documenting these, trying to keep these fragmented sculptures together, so for further restoration, so they don't get lost. This is an archaeological dig house of the Japanese expedition. It's still fine. The Kurdish militia was there. They kind of protected it. Other work we do, which is not, we do lots of activities with children. This is inside Syria. We do some heritage kind of preservation. This is a project to preserve traditional crafts in the area, and they make this from scratch. It's called the Hikaya project. Just going over these quickly because we are more concerned with the things at risk. So some of the projects that women are doing. This is at the refugee camp, the Atma refugee camp, one of the largest ones along the Turkish border. We're also doing this education, cinema, and reading. This is stuff in Berlin. We do workshops, mosaics, Arabic calligraphy, lots of dances and stuff like that. If you happen to be in Berlin, check our schedule for events. And yeah, that's all from me. That's SIMAT. Go on the website if you want to know more about what we do. Thank you.